So everybody, thank you again for joining us at Ceipal Connect. In this session, we will be learning a little bit more about the top 10 staffing technology trends for 2021. For this session, Ceipal is joined by the founder of StaffingTec, Maurice Fuller. Before we launch into today's session, there are a few housekeeping items that we wanted to cover. First, each session will be recorded and available on demand through Ceipal's website after this event. We'll follow up with everyone after the event as well with a follow-up email that contains some more information about how to learn a little bit more about all the different sessions you may have listened in on or may have missed because you were listening to another one. Secondly, we will have a Q&A session following this discussion. All attendees will be able to add their questions within the discussion or Q&A tab to the right of your screen. So if you're watching Maurice's presentation, have a quick question or comment, feel free to share it with us and we'll be able to answer it at the end of the event. And finally, we are on a strict schedule today. To save time for a Q&A period, I will give Maurice a quick 10-minute warning in case we run over in time. And then we'll just make sure that we have time to answer any questions that anyone in the audience may have. And that's it. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Maurice Fuller.
Hey, everyone.
I just wanted to give some insights, of course, so Maurice is a great thought leader within the industry. He's actually the founder of StaffingTec, which is a staffing and recruiting technology advisory firm that also produces events of their own on some of the cutting-edge staffing technology trends. Maurice has been leading the staffing technology and continuous improvement initiatives for more than 2 decades, and he has some great insights and has just constantly been doing some great research and analysis for these different types of trends. So it's definitely a great presentation coming up. Maurice, thank you again for attending, and the stage is yours.
Jacob, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Maurice Fuller, founder of StaffingTec, and this is a very, very exciting time to be part of the staffing industry. There's never been a moment where we've had so many exciting things going on to help serve our customers better. And so what I'd like to do is take you through these trends and lay out the future that's ahead of us in the next several years and this decade, so you can really get a sense for how our industry is going to change. We're going to see dramatic, very significant changes in our industry, more change than in multiple decades before us. So just a little bit about my background. Again, I'm founder of StaffingTec, and I've been involved in the staffing industry for 25 years. Starting as a recruiter, but most of my time has been spent in leadership roles. In the last 20 years, I've been heavily involved in staffing technology. We do several events ourselves. We've got events on mobile apps, on intelligent process automation, and chatbots and conversational systems that we do that you may be of interest. So I want to talk to you a little bit about sort of big picture what's happening right now. So we all know that we're in the midst of this digital transformation. There's a lot of coverage in the press about this topic. Here's an article from the Wall Street Journal, and it's being compared against the Industrial Revolution that we went through in the late 19th and early 20th century. But here's the difference, is that it seems like we are experiencing a lot of change right now, but in fact, we're at the very early stages of the digital transformation. There is so much ahead of us that we're going to be going through, and I want to give you a glimpse of what that's going to look like in my presentation. So when I visit staffing firms, at least when I was visiting staffing firms pre-pandemic, this is what many staffing firms look like. Just seas of recruiters and sales execs busy on the phones and through emails, text messaging, contacting candidates, talking to hiring managers and whatnot to put deals together. And whenever I see this image there, it always reminds me of this picture here, which is an image of telephone operators from 100 years ago connecting calls together manually. This is how we connected people together. We had all these wires, and we had to somehow hook them all together in order for people to communicate with each other. At one point, people were projecting that 10% of the workforce would be involved in switching these phone calls together manually. And of course, the engineers got to work on this problem, and they invented things like the transistor, and they created switches like this to switch phone calls. And of course, there's no humans involved. All those jobs were lost. People moved on to bigger and better things. But it's really kind of fascinating to think about, because back then in the 1920s, the idea of having switches, automated switches that could connect these phone calls together, was just something that very few people could actually imagine, because the technology just didn't exist in order to do that. So that industry transition from humans doing switching phone calls to digital switches. And we're in the midst of a similar transition in our own industry, where we have human beings that are driving processes forward. And the future is that algorithms in the cloud will be driving these processes. So it's a massive shift, and it's being led through artificial intelligence and machine learning primarily. So again, the possibilities with AI and machine learning are astonishing. It's hard to even grasp how far this is going to go. So the other point that I want to make is that not only are these processes being handled through automation, machine learning, but humans themselves are increasingly being managed by machine learning and AI. Millions of people around the planet today are being managed by artificial intelligence. Their jobs are overseen by AI. We even subject ourselves to management when we get onto exercise machines. We have artificial intelligence that coaches us along and helps us become more fit. So you can see where this is going to go, where we have this AI companion that's constantly with us to manage us and to coach us. And increasingly, we'll be working side by side with software bots, not just one or two, but hundreds of software bots that are helping us do our job. So that combination of AI managing us and AI bots working side by side, that's the future that we're very, very rapidly moving toward. So if you think about Amazon, for example, those warehouses, in the beginning, 25 years ago when Amazon got started, everything was manual. But more and more, they're bringing in automation and bots that work side by side with people in these warehouses. And make no mistake, Amazon absolutely wants to get rid of all of these hundreds of thousands of people currently working in warehouses. They want lights out operations, incredibly automated, nothing but bots moving these packages around so they can get goods to us as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But you can see we're in sort of this intermediary stage where humans in these warehouses are working side by side with these bots that move things around. And the same thing in our world in staffing. We're working side by side with software bots increasingly. The best way to think about the rate at which technology is advancing, and it is accelerating, is to just think about the phone that you owned 10 years ago. This is the phone that I had, an iPhone 4 running iOS 7. It had maybe 1,000 apps on it. It was a great phone, but it was mostly a phone. I could look some things up, internet browser, look up stocks and whatnot. But my phone today is dramatically improved. The CPU inside runs about 100 times faster. The graphics are at least 100, maybe 500 times faster. We've moved from a 3G network to a 5G network, so the network speed is dramatically faster. There are a few million apps. The apps that are on there are very sophisticated and increasingly growing in sophistication every single day. So when you project out and you say, hey, look, we made a lot of progress from 2011 until 2021 in our phone. Now think about how much more progress we're going to make in the next decade. I believe that we're going to see twice as much change in the next decade technologically as we just saw in the previous decade. So what I'm saying here is that technology is moving faster than most of us realize. And so we have to consciously lean into technology and keep up with what's going on and stay on top of this and invest more than we think that we need to, because it's really progressing at a faster speed. And just think again about your phone and sort of think out how dramatically your phone might change if these trends continue, and how that's going to change your world. This here, these pictures of these logos here, best represent what we're going to see in the staffing industry in the future. It's some combination of all of these, and some of them, these companies are already there in our industry. Indeed, Flex, when you think about Uber and what they're doing, TopTel, JobStack, but really what's ahead is these consumer companies like Amazon especially. You know, in the 25 years I've been purchasing products from Amazon, I think I've only spoken to somebody there once or twice. And that experience was really great, but tremendous amounts of money were spent with them without any human intervention at all. Now imagine if I had purchased all of those goods in a store. I mean, that would have been thousands of conversations that I would have had with human beings that I no longer have. I just get onto the system and I purchase it on my own. It's totally self-service. So sites like Upwork, Fiverr, Zillow, Expedia, the point here is to study these sites and think about where your firm is today, and then think about these firms here, and then project out how your firm is going to evolve into this future of all of these capabilities and how these companies engage with customers and engage with candidates, and how they treat their customers along the way. All right, so increasingly, your future will look like this. You're going to have a staffing platform in the cloud that's highly automated, 100% in the cloud. You will have a mobile app that will be a very, very important part of the future of your staffing firm, through which candidates, your employees, even your hiring managers engage with you. Your staffing firm will run 24/7. It will never shut down. You won't be constrained by 8 to 5 kind of boundaries. It will always be running. There'll be AI everywhere within your organization. And it will be a platform through which you bring value to your clients. And it will become increasingly technologically sophisticated. And this is all about the transition for staffing firms into tech firms. Right now, we're kind of services firms with lots of human beings doing work. We're transitioning into tech firms where more and more of the work is being done through software and algorithms. So when you think about this image that I showed you before, this staffing firm here, which is mostly now today recruiters and sales execs, this decade is going to see a massive transformation. So, for example, this individual here, who's currently a recruiter, he's now a database manager. This individual here, who's currently a recruiter, this person is now a PM, managing projects internally. This person here, who previously was a recruiter, is now a software engineer. This person here, who's previously a recruiter, is now a DevOps engineer. This person here, who is a recruiter, is now a digital marketing manager. This person here, who was a recruiter, they're still a recruiter, except they work completely differently now. This person is focused on identifying where candidate pools might be located, and then she feeds data to a bot that goes out and it contacts those individuals to find out if they're interested in a specific position or role. This person here is a recruiter today, but her role is entirely different. She doesn't do outbound calls. All of the calls that she takes are with candidates who are scheduled onto her calendar. And so she takes those calls and she qualifies them and she puts them in the system. And then from that point forward, these placements are made automatically. So you're seeing your organization is going to change dramatically this decade in terms of the composition of the people on your team. So I'm going to take you through the top 10 staffing technology trends for 2021. Every year we issue a report and we identify the most important trends that are strategic for the next 3 years. And so I'm going to walk you through these trends fairly quickly. The first one is 5G. Now, this is interesting because you might say, Maurice, what does 5G have to do with staffing? Well, technically, it's a technology that allows you to run data through the airwaves faster. But every time we've stepped up from 2G, the original iPhone was on the 2G network, to 3G, like 10 years ago, 4G, and now 5G, we've seen significant new use cases, new applications that have opened up new worlds for us. So 5G is going to further blur the distinction between the real and the virtual world, and it will also create all kinds of new use cases that we'll be using in recruiting, interviewing, artificial or augmented reality, virtual reality. These kind of capabilities are going to be huge for our industry to work with candidates and work with employees, be able to test drive jobs by having goggles on and just experience what it might be like, for example, to be a forklift driver. So all kinds of new use cases. Also, the latency between that we currently have is going to be cut down. So it's going to create new applications that we can't even imagine at this point that will be very useful in recruiting and staffing. Mobile first staffing. So this kind of builds on this idea of 5G, where mobile is getting so much better and it's so important in our lives that everything we do going forward should really be optimized for that mobile experience. Your website should be absolutely mobile first. Pre-pandemic, 40% of people coming to websites were on mobile phones. Today it's 60% and growing. Your internal employees should have access to mobile apps to get the job done anywhere. Your candidates, they should be able to do everything on their mobile phone as much as possible. So every technology decision should be filtered through that lens of mobile first and mobile optimized in order to be congruent with the direction that the world is moving. Smarter AI and machine learning. Okay, so AI has evolved dramatically in the last few years, but we're going to see massive enhancements in this decade. And so AI is going to show up in everywhere from the standard applications we use, Google Docs and Microsoft Office and email all over our phones, but is also appearing everywhere within staffing technologies. For example, Ceipal has built significant AI directly into the ATS. Applications that sit outside of your ATS will be AI enabled. So it's a very, very important and very significant trend that's going to help us do our jobs better and faster. So just a few predictions that came from the CEO of Oracle. By 2025, that's just 4 years from now, all cloud apps will include AI. 85% of interactions will be with candidates, employees, and customers will be automated, and 85% of interactions will be driven by AI. So it's something that we need to lean into and really accelerate this whole digital engagement that's supported by automation, and AI is going to become huge. So speaking of AI, another system that has been enabled by AI are conversational systems. So what are we talking about here with conversational systems? We're talking about bots that talk, can communicate through SMS, through email, through voice communications. At the heart of it is a system that allows us to communicate. These are communication systems driven by AI. And we communicate a lot. We communicate with candidates, we communicate with employees. So these conversational systems will become central to staffing firms. They'll become a very big part of the way that we engage with the world. They're becoming smarter and smarter. We're talking about bots for qualifying candidates, bots for staying in touch with field employees, bots for possibly engaging with clients. So we'll see massive improvements in this area and in this decade. Some of the things I'm seeing today with very cutting edge firms working with bots just takes your breath away. It's astonishing and something to really pay attention to. All right, digital marketing. So in the old days of staffing, it was really easy. You just had to, have a website, maybe you had some brochures, your salespeople did a lot of the work, but as we transform into technology firms, the role of digital marketing is becoming more and more and more important. So what I'd like to sort of share with you is this notion that digital marketing is everywhere. It's how we engage with our candidates. It's how we track and engage with hiring managers and prospective customers. It's how we advertise our jobs. There's so much about digital marketing, and it's so complex, it's evolving so quickly that most staffing firms are relying increasingly on outside resources to provide all the capabilities that they need to have for digital marketing. So it's definitely a capability that you want to evolve. And also digital marketing increasingly is taking this role of having this overview of the entire organization and how it engages with the world. So it's a function that you will definitely want to build out. Digital engagement. So this is a very simple idea. It's just the idea that in the past, everything that we did, we communicated directly with human beings, talking over the phone or through email and whatnot. All of that is being replaced through digital. So when we communicate with candidates, when we qualify candidates, when we do referrals, when we check up on them for surveys, increasingly this is all being done through digital technologies, through email, SMS, through mobile apps. And when you think about it, this is actually a good thing. When I think about Amazon, I don't work with human beings. I've purchased thousands of items, never talked except one time with a human being. Same thing. This digital engagement is a positive thing. It improves the experience for everyone. So we're going to see so much more digital engagement this decade. Data explosion. So I put this in because I've noticed that the amount of data that staffing firms are working with is increasing dramatically. It used to be really simple. We just had the data in our ATS that we had put in there, and that's the most important data that we had to worry about. That is changing rapidly because now we have apps that connect into ATS systems. All of those apps are generating significant amounts of data. Your website itself generates a lot of data. More and more, our ATS is being enriched with data to keep the data current. We're accessing data on where candidates are located. We're accessing data on where our clients are. We're synthesizing, sort of bringing all that data together to run our business. The data is gold. It's one of the most important assets that you have in your staffing business. And the future is algorithms and your data working together to deliver services. So you want to manage your data, protect your data, and build your algorithms and make them more and more sophisticated. That's the future of our industry. Hyper automation. What are we talking about here? We're talking about streamlining your business with simple programs to perform the activities that human beings are currently performing manually, as well as to perform activities that we can't afford to have human beings do currently because we can't justify spending the money to do that. So currently, many staffing firms have robotic process automations to streamline their internal operations. And the typical staffing firm might have 25 to 50 automations. But when you project forward and you look at where this is moving, a typical staffing firm a decade from now will easily have 1,000 automations, 1,000 bots running their business. Now you might think, Maurice, that's completely crazy. 1,000 bots running my staffing firm? Yes, 1,000 bots running your staffing firm is very realistic a decade from now. Because a typical bot is very simple. It's only 4 programming steps is the average bot. So 1,000 bots times 4 programming steps is 4,000 programming steps. I think it's pretty easy to imagine 4,000 programming steps replicating many of the processes that you have going on within your business. I mean, the original Microsoft Basic from 45 years ago was only 4,000 steps of code. I mean, it was very simple, very, very simple program. So that's the future that you're moving to with your staffing firm. And so you want to project forward, and how are you going to get to that point with automation? Okay, autonomous staffing. This is a hugely important trend. This is the idea that placements will be increasingly made without recruiter intervention. So the recruiter will initially qualify a candidate, and then they move into the system, and afterwards the placements are made autonomously without the recruiters being involved. So you can imagine a situation like a nurse, for example, who is qualified, and that person is then added to the system. She has certifications, or he has certifications and experience, and then that individual is matched up in the system and gets notifications when jobs matching their background appear. And so let's say on a mobile app, swipe left, swipe right for the jobs that you are interested in, and then that matches you up automatically, and then you get onboarded for those positions, just like a dating app in a way. We're moving towards that. And so currently somewhere between 1% and 2% of placements in the US are being done automatically without recruiter intervention. But by the turn of this decade, with all the technologies that are moving along, we think 30% of placements will be made autonomously. So the role of the recruiter doesn't go away. It will change. You'll work with candidates on the front end, especially the higher end candidates, to qualify them, make sure they're a good match. But then once they're in the system, placements will happen increasingly automatically. And this is a good thing because you get to focus on the highest value activities. Okay, so we're at the final trend here, this idea of remote first operations. So this is something that's really been accelerated as a result of the pandemic. So what we're talking about here is that as you're thinking about your team, your staffing organization, and more staffing organizations have become virtual, and they're not returning anytime soon to the office. When you look at these big firms like Microsoft and Salesforce, even Twitter has said they're going entirely virtual. Microsoft is said you have to be at the office at least 50% of the time. I think Salesforce is saying you have to be in the office 2 days out of 5. But increasingly, companies will they'll have these core days or hours where people have to be in the office for collaboration. More and more people will be working from home. So that hybrid. So if you're doing that, you want to make sure that when you're working remotely, that it's a fantastic experience, that it's no better to be working from home than it is to be working in the office. In fact, what I'm arguing is that your remote work environment should be better than what you would experience if you're actually in the office, or at least on par with it. So that's something to really focus on as we reduce the real estate footprints for our staffing firms. All right, so this is an interesting stat that I recently came across. Microsoft introduced a new employee experience platform, and during that announcement, Satya Nadella, who's done such a fantastic job for Microsoft, mentioned that he believes that the spend for technology as a percent of GDP will double in the next decade. So right now, technology spend as a percentage of GDP is about 5%, but in a decade it will be 10%. That is a really huge thing to think about. So just your own staffing firm, to keep up with that, your budget for technology is likely to at least double. So every year, you're going to have to step up your budget for technology and people working with technology within your firm by about 7%, at least by 7% a year, if not more than that. There are so many opportunities now to invest in technology to make your staffing firm operate better, grow faster, and operate more efficiently. So this is something huge, and many of you are in IT staffing, so you can see how IT staffing has tremendous opportunities for growth. I've been in technology now for staffing and technologies for 25 years. In all of this time, I have never seen so many opportunities to invest in technology, to streamline your business, and to enable your business to grow faster and service customers better. So you really should be leaning into technology as much as possible and investing where you can to grow your business and prepare your business for the future, because the future doesn't need as many staffing firms as we have today. With technology, we're going to be able to deliver our services more efficiently and faster and better. And the staffing firms that are technologically the savviest are going to be really successful. They're going to capture more market share. They're going to grow faster. The ones that are not investing in technology increasingly are going to be left behind. They won't be able to keep up with the changes in speed and cost efficiencies. Just a quick note on some of the things that we do. I'm involved in doing tech stack assessments for staffing firms. And also I provide fractional CTO services to help staffing firms with strategic technology decisions. With our tech stack assessments, we show staffing firms how to get more value from their staffing technology, put together technology roadmaps, show them where they can get short-term wins and medium-term wins, where they can automate, where they can improve productivity. So if you're interested in learning more about our technology assessment services, just reach out to me. If you're in the US, go to our StaffingTec website. We have a place where you can order our staffing technology stack diagram, and we'll mail it to you through FedEx. And so that concludes my thoughts on the future of staffing technology.
Great. Thank you again, Maurice. Just to confirm, can you hear me okay right now?
I can, yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Great. So we are getting some comments and questions in the chat, which is great.
Sure.
The first question that came in is asking, what are some of the cutting edge firms that you are impressed with that are taking your breath away?
All right. Okay, so there's really, the mobile applications are really changing our world very rapidly. It's mobile autonomous staffing, very much at the cutting edge, but some of these firms that are using autonomous staffing, that combination of autonomous and mobile, are seeing astonishing results. So, I mentioned nurse staffing, for example. You qualify nurses, put them into your system for autonomous staffing. They get matched up like a dating app. Recruiters only involved. They don't even call them recruiters. They have an entirely different name. It's like a candidate advocate or something like that. But that role is going to shift. It's great because a lot of the transactional work that recruiters are not so fond of is going to go away. It's more working with candidates at a higher level, qualifying them, working with them closely, then moving them into the system. They get matched up. It works very efficiently, moves very quickly. On the conversational system side, what I was trying to allude to was like these virtual recruiters that can engage with candidates and perform entire conversations, replicating what I, as a recruiter, did thousands of times extremely well. The AI is evolving that quickly. So again, if you're a recruiter, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to enable you to move into higher value roles that will actually be more fun than many of the things that you currently have to do. So the future is actually really exciting in recruiting. It's going to be different, but it's actually really exciting.
Yeah, and Maurice, that's actually one of the conversations that I see are going on in the chat, which is great. Thank you all again for kind of contributing to the conversation.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of kind of conversation about technology's roles and whether or not it's really competing against the recruiter's role or kind of adding more to it. There's been some conversations about the possibility of how technology might lead to the extinction of recruiters or just completely change the recruiter's role, making it more competitive. And also some conversations about, depending on the size of the staffing firm, on whether or not they can actually afford to invest in these different upcoming, new forms of technology. Yeah. So I guess what's probably going to be curious, and for the attendees is your thoughts on kind of like how this will specifically impact the recruiter's role down the next 10, 15, 20 years, both positive and on the negative side?
It's a really interesting question. First of all, you shouldn't be afraid of where all of this is moving. You should actually be really excited, because more and more of the work that you don't like to do as a recruiter, that's just routine and transactional, will be handled increasingly by automation. More and more, the higher value activities that you like to do, that coaching of candidates, advising candidates, really having deep conversations, building relationships, that's where the fun is. That's where you're adding the most value. More and more, the technology is going to enable you to do more of that kind of work. So you should actually be really excited about what's ahead. If you want to sort of future-proof your career, you can think about more and more. I can see recruiters involved in helping to automate their positions and streamline more and more different functions of that. But it is really exciting. As far as staffing firms transitioning into this future, that's a huge deal. How do they transition from basically service firms into technology firms? You have about a decade to do this and to transform your organization, and that's where you have to have sort of a long-term vision and roadmap to get there. If you make those investments and gradually step up your spend on technology, and you can make that transition successfully. Many staffing firms will be able to make this transition successfully, but you're going to look different. But you have to have that vision. You have to know where this is moving. You have to work closely with your vendors and build on your existing technology and move your firm into the future. It's absolutely doable, and some firms have done it already. They've kind of leaped into that future quickly, but you can also step into it incrementally. So it's fun. And the great thing is it will make your staffing firm more valuable. You're going to be more valuable to your customers, to a prospective buyer, to all your stakeholders if you're a technology firm.
Great. Yeah, and one more quick question. Thank you again, everyone in the chat. This is probably one of the most in-depth, I guess, conversations. We've got a lot of attendees kind of adding more to the conversation, which is great. And one of the follow-up questions to one of the questions we just asked is regarding the budget. So as the budget for artificial intelligence and technology in general increases over time, staffing firms and companies just across all industries are going to have to redistribute their budget a little bit.
Right.
So there's some conversations about, does this mean, less investments here, less investments there? So I guess what are your thoughts on kind of how exactly to handle this future investment? Because if you're investing more in somewhere else, it means you're kind of taking away from somewhere else too. So just your thoughts on that.
That's an interesting question. So I recently spoke to the president of a staffing firm that's been investing pretty heavily in robotic process automation, and I said, how is this affecting your staffing? I mean, are you, with all these bots that you've built, is that reducing the number of recruiters that you have? And she said, no, not really. We're the same size staff that we have been, but we're just more efficient, and we're delivering services better. So the thing that's a challenge is that there's so many opportunities to invest. Like I said before, there are so many opportunities to take money, to take capital and invest it in technologies and see significant ROI, better ROI than you would certainly see if you would put it in a bank account or even in the stock market. You can see significant gains in productivity that justify those investments. But with so many opportunities, the challenge is, where do you start? Oftentimes I'll go into a company and I'll do an assessment. I'll see like 100 or 200 opportunities. And so where's the low-hanging fruit? Where do we start first in this long journey of moving to highly automated tech company? And that's, I think, the challenge just is picking like the top 10 initiatives. We're going to start here. These are the foundational initiatives. And these are things that we can add on that will help us win more deals, help us make more placements, help us retain better. We're going to focus on these areas first, and we're going to step into this gradually. So you should have at least, like a couple years of ideas in your backlog of ideas that are fed into this funnel. Then you make decisions about what you're going to focus on week after week after week and systematically invest. That's the transition. Technology firms are innovators. They're constantly improving everything that they do. The idea of having a platform that just stays static forever, that just doesn't exist anymore. You're moving into an area where you're constantly improving week after week after week, every facet of your business, looking for 1% wins, 0.5% wins. It's a different future, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah, and we have time for one more question, hoping you can answer in 60 to 70 seconds really quick. The last question we have is, which trend long-term will have the most significant impact on our industry?
Yeah. Well, certainly, I think bottom line, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning, that is the single most important trend that will completely transform our industry, right? That underlying AI that is working its way into the ATS, into all the peripheral apps, long-term, that's a game changer. That will change everything about our industry. But there's other things as well. For example, mobile apps is having a huge impact. AI certainly is feeding into that other trend, conversational systems. That's feeding into hyper automation. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Definitely. Well, thank you again, very, very much. Not only Maurice, great presentation, great topic to talk about, and thank you for breaking it down to all these different types of trends as well. The attendees, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody,
for contributing to the chat and asking some great questions. And yeah, I just like to thank you all again. And within a minute and a half or so, we will all transition to the closing session for Ceipal Connect. I hope you all enjoyed your sessions. Thank you again, Maurice, and we will see you all in a minute or so for the closing session.
All right.
Thank you again
so much. It's been great to have this opportunity to speak with you.